Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for July 23rd, 2024. I'm going to take up a couple of questions today for which I don't have definitive answers yet, but these are questions which I think must be asked because there are some sudden changes in the U.S. political situation which are provoking questions. It's definitely a confusing situation. You start with the fact that Joe Biden has been slipping cognitively for a long time. His decline has been clear to virtually everyone for a long time before the June 27th debate. So why not remove him earlier? And the usual answer is, well, it wasn't too bad and they thought he was the one chance to defeat Trump, so they had to keep him in. Well, all of a sudden, after June 27th, there was a drumbeat to remove him. And Democrats, especially the donor class, the billionaires, demanded that he withdraw. Now, ironically, as soon as he withdrew, they praised him for being such a great president. So why push him out? The deeper question, though, is if he's too weak and mentally incompetent to run for president, which they all seem to agree, why leave him in office now when we're in an extremely dangerous situation with the potential for an outbreak of World War III, including a nuclear war with Russia and an expanding war in Southwest Asia? Why leave him in office if he's so mentally impaired with his finger on the nuclear button? Now then we're told that Biden was adamant that he was not going to step down, but that Nancy Pelosi played the definitive role in convincing him that he had to leave. Now, there are more questions about the announcement of his withdrawal. Up to the last minute, we were told he's staying in the race, and then all of a sudden, a message goes out on the White House Twitter X account, which is unsigned, with no personal appearance by Biden, saying that he's now withdrawing. Did he agree to this? These are questions that are being asked. And then the immediate rapid consolidation around Kamala Harris, handing her the nomination, even though in 2020, despite all the hype about her, her campaign collapsed, and she withdrew before the first primary as she was registering less than 3% in Iowa and New Hampshire. And her time as vice president, despite we're hearing from Biden what a great partner she was, she has no real accomplishments. And when she speaks, it's hard to get to the end of a sentence because she goes around in circles. So I want to present two views of this quickly to give you a sense of the kinds of questions that are being posed. One is from the Republican congressman from Kentucky, Thomas Massie, who sent out on his X account, quote, "If a coup happened in your own country, would you recognize it? This is a coup of a puppet regime. Why is he even in the White House now?" Now, that was sent out yesterday. 3 days ago, he was, I think, a little more clear on what he was saying. He said the question for the Democratic Party elites who are engaged in a coup against their democratically elected nominee, how do you argue he's not fit to be a candidate while maintaining he's still competent enough to have his finger on the nuclear button? So there you have it, an open, honest assessment from Tom Massie. Now, I found an article by Seymour Hersh completely compelling. Hersh, the much celebrated journalist, on July 20th on his Substack platform had a column, "A Presidency's Bitter End." And here's what he wrote, and this is based on discussions he was having with key people around Biden and the Democratic Party. Biden knows he has to go. Now, this is the day before he dropped out. Biden knows he has to go, but that doesn't mean he's happy about it. Hersh said some of the major donors were angry and critical that he had decided not to leave, and more importantly, that they hadn't been told how cognitively impaired he was. But then Hersh raised a very interesting analogy, that of Lyndon Johnson leaving the presidential race in 1968 when he announced on March 31st he was not going to run for re-election. Now, what Hirsch said is that what Johnson said, he was not going to run because he was going to focus on running the Vietnam War, that he insisted that it could still be won. And Hirsch said that was a deranged view. Now, he said the notion that Biden is capable of managing the disastrous American involvement in the wars in Ukraine and Gaza until the inauguration of his successor next January is just as far-fetched as Johnson's belief that the Vietnam War could be won. Now, Hirsch goes on to say that it was Pelosi who convinced Biden to leave the race. And he said that the problem the Democrats have is that Kamala Harris is both equally incompetent and doing even worse in the polls. So what is gained by this change in the Democratic Party? Now, if you think about that, you then have to look at Biden's note of withdrawal on X, where he announced, "It is in the best interest of my party and my country for me to stand down." And he added, quote, "I will focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president," unquote. Well, it's clear that he's not been capable of fulfilling the duties as president. And the question then is, since he's not doing it, who's running the country? Who's making the decisions? Who decided to escalate the war against Russia, to use the NATO summit to increase the U.S. commitment to this war, as well as the policy of funding and arming Israel with its war of ethnic cleansing against the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank? This latter question is crucial because Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived in the United States and he's scheduled to address the Congress tomorrow on the 24th, invited by Republicans to speak. Now, here's the question. Are the Republicans supporting the Gaza war? What about the war in Ukraine? Where is Trump on this? Where is Kamala Harris on this? Well, given that the International Court of Justice has just ruled that Israel is violating international law with its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, will the defenders of the rules-based order greet Benjamin Netanyahu, who very soon could be indicted for his behavior against the Palestinians? Well, it's clear there's a profound disconnect in the U.S. establishment, but to some extent that exists in the population as well, largely due to the hybrid warfare, the psychological warfare, the lying, the censorship, the suppression of truth that keeps people caught up in a whirl of a soap opera, when in fact, in their name, people are dying every single day. And tens of billions, hundreds of billions are being put into these wars, with hundreds of billions more being promised for future wars. It's clear that Biden's war policies are unpopular. What about Harris? Is she going to double down on Ukraine? And what will the Republicans do? Will Trump actually move, as he told Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, to gain a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia as soon as he's elected? Well, the real question is, in a Trump versus Harris campaign, will these issues even be raised? That's why we're putting together a Council of Reason, because these discussions must take place. What goes on behind closed doors is not democracy. It's an oligarchy ruling as an authoritarian clique that then manipulates the population as a, quote, democracy, unquote, in the same way that Shakespeare portrayed the aftermath of Julius Caesar's assassination, of the crowd being wooed initially against Brutus, or for Brutus, and then against Brutus. That you can manipulate crowds, and is that what's being done today? Is that why it's possible to say there's a coup underway in the United States? So these are crucial questions. And over the next days, we'll hope to get more answers on this. So I will have in the description section today a link to the discussion of the Council of Reason. Yesterday I asked you to send us your suggestions for the names of some of the senior statesmen and stateswomen who should be brought into such a council. And I did receive some suggestions. I thank you for that, but we need a lot more. So rack your brains, think about it. Who can you trust? Do you think you can trust to address the situation honestly as we continue down the path toward destruction?